City of Stevens Point Board of Park Commissioners meeting, recorded September 4, 2019.
Right on time. Since the couple of new people here, and some of us may have already forgotten the names from last series of sessions, I think we'll just go around and introduce ourselves again.
Mike Gladowski.
Liz McDonald.
Makira Zarazua.
Sue Hall.
Bob Freckman.
Dan Kramer.
John O'Connick.
Jeremy Slewinski.
Wayne Sorensen.
Kyle Smith.
And David Shore.
Okay, very good. And the second item, approval of the minutes of the July 3rd meeting.
I move to approve.
Okay, second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item number 3, discussion of possible action on camera installation in Rec Center Gymnasium by the Boys and Girls Club. And do we have somebody to?
We do. So we have Peter Gebhardt here with us tonight. That's with the Boys and Girls Club of Portage County. I'll give a little summary on this item. In July, Peter had reached out to me and we had discussed the possibility of a camera being installed in the gymnasium at the Rec Center. There currently is not one. As you're probably all aware, it's a shared use area. So they have items or activities going on there all summer, pretty much all day, and then during the school year on the evenings very frequently. We also have activities, basketball and things of that nature that happen there. What the proposal that's before the commission tonight is permission for the Boys and Girls Club to go ahead and install a camera. And the reasoning before it, which was in the packet, was in case something were to happen or something were to come up that their staff doesn't see when they always are staffed and supervised, but this would give them a tool or resource to use to look up items if they were to arise. The city, we reviewed this. Ultimately, the proposal is for the Boys and Girls Club to pay for the camera and to maintain the camera. And that also alleviates any issues with open records requests. So if somebody were to want to get open records for that camera, the city doesn't own it. We don't maintain it or take care of it. So it would actually go through the Boys and Girls Club. However, the proposal would allow the city, if something were to happen during city activities, access to that footage if we wanted to. So Peter, I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add, but the proposal tonight would be seeking permission for the Boys and Girls Club to install that camera, and city staff recommendation is to allow that installation.
I move approval.
I second.
Okay, any discussion, questions? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Okay, item number 4, discussion of possible action on the Kozakowski Park and Erickson Natural Area proposed easement management plan and compensation offer presented by American Transmission Company. And most of us have just finished touring the area, but we probably could still use a summary for those who are watching this on TV or otherwise interested. So somebody.
Yep, I can lead off. So we do have 2 members from the American Transmission Company with us tonight, representatives Ben Hock and Adam Helmanek, that are here that can discuss or answer questions if there's some that come up. In the tour that we took preceding this meeting, ultimately we went down, what we have is there's a high voltage transmission line that goes through Kozakowski Park in the Erickson Natural Area. And there currently is an agreement on file that dates back to 1981. I think it's originally with the Wisconsin Public Service, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these summaries here, guys. But that details what the vegetation heights and some of the management that takes place within that easement is. What's before the commission tonight is a formalized easement that gives a definitive line in terms of how far from the center line or what the width of the easement is. It also further delineates and talks about what can go on within that easement. So the ability for the City of Stevens Point staff, for example, to trim on that vegetation would no longer be part of that agreement. And that relates to safety and training. The standards back then are much different than they were today, and we don't do any of those practices anymore at this point anyways. So what you have is there's really 3 zones. There's the Upland Park area, which was labeled as Zone 1 in the management plan, the wetland and waterway buffer area, which was labeled as Zone 2 in the plan, in the upland areas, which is labeled as Zone 3 in the management plan that was put before you. The details of the plan, and if you guys want to add it, you can, but ultimately there's establishment of some pollinator areas, which is going to be in the upland area, and some height restrictions of 15 feet for much of the other areas so that we don't have some of the vegetation growing into the transmission line. This has been worked on for well over the last year. I think some of the initial discussions based on the management plan go back to obviously when Tom was here in June of 2018, I think is what was on the plan, and much longer, I'm sure, before even that. The city staff has been involved with this, with the forestry department, as well as the parks department, myself. We've had several discussions. The Audubon Society was brought in so that they could review the plan and provide feedback on it, as well as the McDill Pond Association. And we as well sent letters to about 40 adjoining neighbors so that they could be made aware of it. Part of this easement and management plan includes a compensation offer. The compensation offer was detailed. It's $20,000 that ATC is proposing to go along with this approval of the easement. And what city staff recommendation would be, if everything goes forward, would be to designate a sinking fund for the Kosciuszko Park and the Erickson Natural Area, so that $20,000 can be used for projects within the park and area, as well as the pollinator garden and things of that nature. If there's anything that you guys would like to add or questions for Ben or Adam, we can definitely take those at this point, but staff recommendation would be to move forward with this, which would then go on to the Common Council.
I have a question. We really don't have a whole lot of choice in this anyway, right? We have the contract is there, and this stuff has to be cut, right, by law, so.
Correct, and the easement, and you guys can weigh in on this more, the agreement that's on file currently isn't as clearly defined. So this actually defines the boundary and the area, which is advantageous for us in terms of, there's no question in terms of how far out it goes.
And this would supersede the previous agreements.
Correct, the 1981 agreement would be no longer valid.
Liz? Liz?
What is the length of time that the easement agreement is for?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, okay, so that $20,000 is a one-time payment? Is that? Any chance of us getting any additional monies for the park out of it?
So one additional funding source that we do apply for and we have utilized is ATC's grant program. So that has been used even prior to this for the pollinator garden area. But the discussions, initial negotiations that we've had for this would be the one-time payment of the $20,000 for this easement. And then we are always able to continue to apply for the grants for some of the management within the area.
Well, we could have a motion then.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal in front of us, to accept the money and whatever their agreement states.
In the designated fund?
Correct, yes, as you stated.
I second.
Okay, Sue? Any further discussions? Yeah, Liz?
Just how does this compare to the dollar amount? How does that compare to easements in other communities?
Well, easements are based on fee value typically.
Okay,
In this case, I would say that's a little different because we're an established easement.
okay.
But because we're proposing that it's beneficial to us as well, we propose the additional compensation for it. So this one isn't necessarily based on the fee value, but it's based on trying to get cooperative neighbor with management.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like we're ready for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Okay, the fifth item, discussion and possible action on irrigation bids for Piffner Pioneer Park.
So the memo that I passed out, that you all should have got a copy of here this evening, is for the Piffner Pioneer Park irrigation. And the reason that the memo was separate from the packet is we first opened bids yesterday afternoon. So based on the timeline and the bidding requirements for how long it has to be advertised, 1 o'clock yesterday was when we actually opened bids. When you look at the project, I just want to give you a brief summary of it. This project actually dates back to 2018. Some of you may recall the project balance or fund balance was $45,000 that the city had set aside for this project. Out of that $45,000, the city agreed to put $10,000 towards the cultural commons irrigation because the city would have put irrigation there anyways had that project not happened. So we had $35,000 designated for irrigation in Piffner Pioneer Park to replace the current irrigation system. Yesterday, we had one bid that came in, and you'll see it came in at $58,810, which is just under $24,000 over budget. We've evaluated that bid and looked through it. We've made a few calls to talk through. The timeline of the bid and the project, the reason it's structured the way it is because of the heavy use there. The only time we can really disturb the park is in late fall, when events have stopped, and then have it completed before late spring, when the events begin to start again. So we have a very narrow window to try to complete it. The late bidding window, as well as the tight time frame, we believe is what contributed to only having one bidder. So what we're looking at doing and what staff recommendation is to actually reject the singular bid that we received that is currently over budget, to rebid the project in March of this next year, potentially earlier if we can have it ready to go, as a 2020 project in the fall with completion in the spring of 2021. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one reason is it would allow us more time and it would allow us to seek the additional funding for the project. That way, if a bid comes in very similar to what it is now, we have the additional funding. So the memo calls for that I would request $25,000 for our next capital budget request with the city and bring the project fund to $60,000 then. However, we believe in our conversations and in our evaluation, by bidding it at that time of the year and giving that long window before they'd actually begin, we should be able to potentially get additional bidders, which we believe can result in some cost savings. So the recommendation tonight would be to decline that, the single bid from Revi Design, and to seek additional funding for the project to bring that balance to $60,000 and to rebid in 2020. I should also note, so you know, we do have working irrigation in the park, so it's not that we won't have water there. It's just the way that it's configured. It gets hit multiple times a year. It's been deteriorating. Staff has evaluated it, and we believe we can still water the park and water the cultural commons next year. It's not going to be the most efficient in terms of the operations, and it will require us to keep checking in on it like we've been. However, it's not that we won't have water access in 2020.
Is there a way that could be done in the spring if they had a longer spring? I mean, is it possible?
The only way it could be done, not to be completed by May 15th. They believe it's going to take them 3 to 4 weeks. I mean, if we had a really early winter, potentially. But that was why we had talked about maybe bidding it out sooner, but we were going to plan for March at the latest.
And the big thing is with the activities, once the spring sets in, the schedule.
Correct. I think the first large-scale event that goes on there is usually between May 10th and May 15th.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one of the problems with the current system, just in case you're curious, the main runs actually right down the center of the park. The new design brings the main line over to the road edge so that we don't have that big pipe underneath the ground there. And then the laterals will come off of that.
You hear, Mike?
What would be the earliest timeline to starting the project then?
So we would set it up after our last event in September. So this year, for example, the 27th was the first day we were going to allow work to begin. And it would be similar next year. We'll review the calendar for when that last weekend of events is.
Could they do it in zones? I'm just thinking we'd get a better bang for our buck if we, allow them, sections. Usually you get early spring.
The conversation is in terms of if you're saying doing like the first bit and then leaving it and coming back? Or?
Well, no, I'm just wondering if we could put a date down there and allow them to do zones instead of closing the whole park down for the period of time.
I guess I'm confused by like you're saying doing just a portion of the park.
Oh, no,
have
them do stages of it instead of closing. I'm assuming they're planning on closing that whole area down for a month or so.
Well, because everything ties together, yeah, their intent was basically to open up their trenches, put in the lines and have it all tied in. And it's easiest, the way I understand it, to do that all at one time versus burying the pipe and then trying to open it back up to connect to it. We could have that conversation if we were desirous, but we haven't explored that option at this point. We're going to do it as a turnkey project. So they could come in and work continuously for a few weeks to have it finished.
I just think this is the reason everybody's running into it. I mean, everybody's tying up projects in October, and who wants to commit to it, so.
So we're open to a motion to reject and then take up the new timetable. John?
Yep, I'll propose that we reject it and rebid it next spring.
I'd second.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And director's report.
So I've got a little bit of a lengthy report this month because we hadn't met last month. First and foremost, the biggest thing that kind of took place since the last time is the storm. So a lot of the staff has been working, the forestry staff especially still, to do some of the storm damage. In total, we had 60 trees approximately that were lost between the city parks and the city streets. And it was a little more than half were in the parks compared to the streets. So we have some contractors that are working on removing the large upheaved stumps, and all of those things we've been tracking to see if we can get some funding back on it, depending upon what the declarations are for the storm, whether FEMA gets involved and things of that nature. So we have done a heavy tracking process. The finance department's been very helpful for making sure that we have that stuff recorded, so if we can get some of that money back. Work has started for the fall 2019 tree planting. Nearly 50% of it, the planting addresses that they're doing, is a result from the emerald ash borer and removals in city parks, as well as the other 50% from some of the storm damage and city resident requests for trees. So that's where that kind of makes it up. So far this year, we've had 16 Dutch elm disease condemnation letters that have gone out. Oak wilt and ash tree notices will be going out for the same thing here in the month of September. Piffner Park, if you've been by, you've seen the playground was removed, and they are set to try to put that into the new playground beginning next week. So we hope to have that up and running here soon. If they get in and have good weather, it could be something that's done in a couple weeks. It really depends upon how that weather does for that. We had 2 press releases released by the Forestry Department in this last month. One was for some of the tree watering that they sent out for friendly reminders ultimately, and then another was on the pollinator garden in Mead Park, and WAOW actually picked up a piece on that pollinator garden, so I could send you the link if anyone didn't see it. On the park side, we did put new wood fibers and wood chips in for Yoga Park and Village Green Playgrounds, so those were getting down quite a bit, so that's been completed for this year. The Friends of Emerson Park have been busy. They had a big cleanup event a week ago, as well as the Labor of Love through UWSP was down in Emerson Park, sealing the basketball court, painting the playground equipment, and doing some weeding of the flower beds. So there's been quite a bit of activities going on in that park. There'll be some tuck point repairs going on at the rec center, Iverson Beach House, and Iverson, the entrance on Hillcrest Drive. Those are capital projects from for 2019 that we just got bids for. Holton Construction will be doing that work and should be beginning and completing before November 1st. And then today we actually had the groundbreaking ceremony for Xenoff Park's turf project. So that was at 10 o'clock today. We brought everybody down. Rettler helped us with that. There'll be a press release going out. That project is set to begin Monday as well, and it's supposed to finish by October 31st. So we're in for a pretty busy fall here with some projects. When that's done, there'll be 3 turf fields there at Xenoff, which should allow for some earlier play in the spring. On the recreation facility side, Riverfront Rendezvous was obviously right after the meeting that we got together last time. We did have a successful year. We profited approximately $9,000 for 2019. That really is a direct relation to some increased sponsorship dollars that were made possible during Tom's tenure here before he retired, as well as we had good weather on Friday and Saturday. Thursday we got rained out for a good portion, so we were a little bit down. Just for informational purposes, Riverfront Rendezvous 2020 will be Friday, July 3rd through Sunday, July 5th, and the fireworks will be scheduled for the Sunday on July 5th, which is I'm told that's the similar schedule that would normally run on a typical year because of the fourth falling where it does. The Willett Arena is in the final stages. We will be making ice very soon. The dasher boards and new glass and refrigeration systems all installed and up and running. So after we go through some training next week, the staff will be with Tweet Garrett, the refrigeration company. The ice will begin then already on the 9th. That's when they'll start putting it in. They're scheduled to paint lines and things next Wednesday. So the municipal pool is closed at the end of August here. There'll be, in the capital budget, there'll be some items in relation to the pool that we're going to be putting in, trying to replace that filtration system that we've had issues with. I'll have more details on that for you next month. On the administrative side, Andrea Selkirk was hired as the new director of the Riverfront Arts Center, and she began on Tuesday. So if you get a chance or get down to the Arts Center, please say hi. She's plenty busy. There's a new show starting on Friday, so hitting the ground running. Our capital budget requests have been submitted for 2020. Some of those things will be going on to the Finance Committee next month, and again, I'll have updates for you on how some of that's set up. And our operational budget process is currently taking place, so definitely in budget season. Lastly, I just wanted to mention the October Park Commissioner meeting. We are planning a cultural commons tour, similar to what we did for the structure tonight, probably time-wise, as well as going to the Willett Ice Arena to kind of see some of those projects that we've done recently. And then the hope is we'll have a meeting because there's a number of items we still have to do, and then the cookout would follow. So I've heard that's been a tradition, so that's what we're going to set up for October. So please mark your calendars, and more information to come on that.
Dan, is there any update on the goose control problem down in Piffner Park?
Sure, I can provide, and John can weigh in here as well. We did get the initial reports back here from Jaden, who was helping us, one of the students. And really, the report, ultimately, the summary is that initially, it worked a little bit to do some scaring in the park, but it didn't sustain, so that they came right back in ultimately. And John, you can probably weigh in more on the report. So ultimately, it wasn't as successful as we originally anticipated, and we didn't see any long-term results based off of that.
Was there, maybe John would know this, was there anything, I thought we were looking at culling the
That'll be
herd,
something we'll
so to
have to,
speak?
yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the next step we'll have to address, because the nuisance control isn't, as far as they're, isn't working, so.
I have another question that's kind of related, but one of the things I've read is that putting a rock barrier between on the edge of the river might be of help to keep the geese out. And also, if you folks have gotten down through Piffner Park lately, I think the high water that we've had this summer, and it's not a no wake area for boats and stuff, but that shoreline is really being affected by it. And as a matter of fact, I know Tom used to have some of the staff measure from the middle of the walk of the Green Circle Trail there to the edge of the water. And I'm not sure where they're measuring, but it's really, we're really losing some shoreline there. And I'm thinking if we were able to do the riprap, the rock, that might help the shoreline too. And with the tree loss that we've had in the park, some of them were right along the shoreline there, and there's a few areas where there's the root ball is sticking up, and we're gonna lose that shoreline as well. So I don't know if that's something that staff could be looking at, Dan?
Yeah, I've got it on my list, and I'm actually going to follow up with Tom shortly. I'll see him actually tomorrow to talk about where those measuring points were, and then I'll try to gather some more information on that.
Yeah, because even no matter where the measuring points were, if a person takes a look at it, it's pretty obvious that we are losing shoreline. And, I mean, if you selectively take some points, you're probably going to be okay. But if you look at it, there's some places where there's only maybe 2 feet between the Green Circle Trail and the shoreline. So, and I've seen plenty of boats and other vehicles go through there at quite a speed that really produce quite a wave. So I think that's just going to continue to erode that shoreline unless something can be done about it. So.
Yeah,
And how many years
also the
ago-
problem, do we have anything to say about no wake areas?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, there's probably some ordinance things that could be reviewed, but that'll be, and let me dig into it a little further, and I can try to bring some more information back.
Thank you.
I think we concentrated more towards the cultural commons, more towards the bridge with the riprap. I know what you're talking about. There's some areas where 2 or 3 feet is the maximum, and
Yeah.
it's getting closer and closer, so.
Okay, well, it looks like a motion to adjourn is in order.
So move.
Somebody second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.